Today we're going to look at the jQuery UI, or the jQuery user interface. The jQuery UI is very similar to a jQuery plugin in the sense that it has a lot of code that someone else has written, and it relies on having the jQuery library installed or linking your web page to it, and also linking your web page to the jQuery UI library. And there are a lot of very interesting interactions you can add to your web page without you having to write a lot of code. We're going to look at the demos here, and I'm going to go through a couple of them with you, and then I'd like you to just on your own go through the rest of them. So here's an example of an interesting jQuery UI, the draggable. This allows you to put a div on your page with an ID and make it interactive so it can be dragged around. And I think of this one as interesting if you think back to the Pine Point example, the town, the web documentary of Welcome to the Pine Point, and there were several pages with all different levels of interaction. On one of the pages, or at least a couple of them, this was one of the types of interaction they had, where there were some images on top of other images, and you had to click and drag the images around to be able to see what was underneath. So I thought this could be an interesting example. Another one that can also just be practical is the resizable. It allows you again to put a div with an ID on your page and to make it resizable. So you could use this to save screen real estate, but also for a certain amount of interaction. We're also going to look at the accordion. And so the same thing can allow you to have interaction on your page and also save screen real estate. So when the page opens up, they can see the different sections here and then click on them and be able to get the information here. And then the tooltip is something that we've actually sort of been working with already. We've been working with the title tag, which is what drives this. When I hover over one of these links, I get a tooltip that opens up. But the difference is with the jQuery UI that I can pick up all these different themes so it can be styled to look a lot nicer than just using the regular tooltip. So those are the ones that we're going to start looking at here in this practice. Again, I'm just at jQuery UI. I have this up on Blackboard. And let's start with the draggable. So the way we use these actually is pretty easy. We're going to click on the icon down here where it says View Source, and I'm just going to copy all of this code over into Dreamweaver, into a new web page, and then we'll talk about what's here. So just select everything. Don't want to select those numbers. Copy it. Go over to Dreamweaver, where I've just set up a site that I'm giving the site name jQuery UI, and I do have one image in here. I just took one of my smaller images from the blog practice and I've added that. And now I'm going to create a new file, and I'll call this draggable, and open it up. I'm going to select the text here, delete it, and paste in all the other code from the jQuery UI draggable demo page. So when we look up here, just starting to analyze this, we have the title, and that's their title. It says jQuery UI blah blah blah. I'm going to delete that, and I'll change that to say, this is my draggable page now. So this is what shows up in the browser window, as we know. Now let's look at the links and scripts that we have up here. There's a link to a page that says code jQuery UI theme smoothness jQuery UI CSS. So even if I don't understand all of that, what I can understand is that this is linking to an external style sheet, an external CSS style sheet. It's using a theme called smoothness. So at the end we'll talk about how to change that, but that's going to basically decide the look of my draggable. After that, I see two script sources. The first one is just going to jQuery, and the second one is going to jQuery UI. So these are both web addresses that store the jQuery library. In our previous examples, we used a different web address, which you could continue to use, the Ajax address. That would work as well. This is where jQuery itself is hosting the jQuery library. There's one thing that's missing, though, that our demo page didn't need because it was a local page, is it doesn't have the HTTP here. So for this to work, I need to put the HTTP : before the double slash. Same thing down here, HTTP : for this to work. So this is, again, just telling the browser, go to this web address to be able to interpret and get the information you need from the jQuery library. go to this web address to be able to get the jQuery UI library. And we're going to need that HTTP if we want to be able to use their theme or their style sheet as well. So we can try this without the style sheet, and then we'll go back and we'll correct that. And down here, it's also, again, linking to a style sheet, but this is a local address. So this actually isn't going to make a difference. Then we have their CSS style, so my opening and closing style tag. And I can see that this is styling something with the ID of draggable. And I'll just change this around so it's in the order how we've been styling or writing our rules. So we can see this a little clearer. So I see that there's been a width and a height and padding set. And remember the EM stands for EMS, and that is the 1 EM is the default unit of measurement on that person's computer. So it's a flexible unit. And then underneath that, I have my jQuery script, my opening and closing script tags. And I have a function here that says anything with the ID of draggable, apply draggable, which is the jQuery UI, to it. And it's called a function. I apply the function of draggable to it. I look down here in my body, and I can see that I have a div with an ID of draggable. It's also been given a class of UI widget content. And I have a paragraph tag that says drag me around, and my closing div tag, and that's the end of it. So if I save this and preview it in the browser, I can see that I see the text, but I don't see that box around it anymore. It does drag around. So I don't see the box around it because I'm not using the style sheet. So let's go back over here. The style sheet is part of what's going to give it the box. And where it says the href, I'm going to put in the HTTP : So now I've added that in 3 spots, my first 3 lines here. I've added it for my style sheet, for my CSS, and I added HTTP : in front of the jQuery script and in front of the jQuery UI script. So now let's save it and preview. And now I can see the box. So that is coming from that CSS, and it drags around. So obviously I can insert this div with the ID onto inside of other divs on my page. Now let's talk about the look of it. And my first line up here was talking about a theme smoothness. And if I go back over to the page, to the jQuery UI, there's a link here for themes. So there are all of these different themes that I could use. I'm going to go to the gallery. And this is the one for smoothness. But let's just say, for example, I wanted to take sunny. So all I need to do is change the word smoothness to sunny. Oops. And now let's save it and preview. And now it's picked up the attributes of the rules that were set up in the CSS style sheet for sunny. So for any one of these jQuery UIs, if you want to change its look, so if you don't want the accordion to have this kind of gray look, this, if I'm looking at the source code, is using probably smoothness as well. So I can just go into the themes and give it one of these other names. So let's just do one more example. If I want it to look like start, so all I need to do is go up to that first line up here, and where it says sunny, I'll now change it to start. And let's see if this box looks different. So now it has blue tones. It's very faint to see, but the outline is blue and the inside is blue. So what if I don't want to use their themes? I don't have to use them. I could get rid of this, and I could write my own style. So I'm going to get rid of that page that was linking to the CSS, or that line of code. And I already have a rule that's set up here for draggable that came with this. So I could add a background color, for example, of red. Save it and preview. And so now it's red. So if I didn't get rid of that line of code, the CSS that they had, I wouldn't be able to see the background color, because their CSS rule, their style sheet, would override any of the CSS rules I put in here. I'm also going to take this opportunity to talk about one of the CSS designer panels over here. I haven't talked about them a lot because I think that it's a lot better actually to just understand how to do these things in code directly. But if I'm over here in the CSS Designer panel and the ID of Draggable should be highlighted because that's the only style on my page, I can come down here and I could also see how quickly or easily I can change the attributes for that rule. And what we're going to look at here is the icon that's for the background. And here I can see my background color red. This is the attribute I've already put in. And down here is a section for the URL, background, setting a background image. And I'm going to click on, there should be a little browse button here. I'll click on that. Oh, disappears on me. Try it again. And it opens up into my folder, and I'm going to click on the approach. And now that added it to my CSS rule. So there are actually a lot of interesting attributes that you can add here, and this can be a good way to start learning the different things such as the border and the radius, and to continue working with the different things with CSS, working through these panels. But I also want to make sure that you know how to do it directly in the code. So that, again, that can be an easy way to just add a background image to your page if you want. But we've just added that background to the draggable. So now let's save this in preview. And so now, and it is repeating. So I would have to change the size either of my image or change the size of this box. But so now I have text here and I have an image, and it is draggable. So again, think of this in some kind of interactive, like web documentary type of example, where maybe I have a stack of things behind and I have to interact with the page, clicking and dragging these little boxes to move them around. Okay, so in the next video, I'm going to go back over to here and just bring back up to the demos, and I'll talk about resizable next.